how do we start? Do we have like an opening?
This is kind of it, yeah.
Okay, well, welcome back. If this is your second episode, if this is your first, then welcome. This is Movie Food. We now actually have a title.
Yes.
So, Movie Food, the podcast. And if you know the reference, I'll give you a hint. It's related to MF Doom. So if you're an MF Doom fan, you should know about Movie Food.
Yes.
But anyway, here we are. And we're getting into the flow of things. So we're going to start off with a section that we're calling Quick Cuts.
Quick Cuts.
Which is basically just, random thoughts, something that's not really enough to discuss for a full episode. The focus of our episode today is actually going to be on our favorite movies. And we both picked the favorite movies from each other, and we're going to discuss those. And so stay tuned for that. So for our quick cuts, like, what do you have, Steve? Is there anything that's been on your mind? Anything you've seen lately that you want to just like bring up? And
well, I guess I mentioned it on the last ep. I finished Wife of a Spy.
Cool. So how was it?
I think the last episode I mentioned, I still had about 20 minutes left. It was a pretty critical last 20 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know if you've had a chance to see it. So this is Kurosawa's latest. It ends pretty epically.
Oh, wow.
And it's for a movie that's very nicely paced and even, and it kind of just gives you a little bit of information here and there of what's happening in the plot with this. The wife of the spy realizes her husband's a spy. She starts to get involved with it, helping. Eventually, they're trying to get to America. And then the last 20 minutes, it all goes to shit. And it's
wow.
And it's so I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it, but
yeah,
I loved it at an hour and a half, and I love it at an hour 50. It's awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's my quick cut.
Okay, that's perfect. Actually, that's a great alley-oop for me because when I mentioned Ryosuke Hamaguchi, the Japanese filmmaker, when you were talking about Japan and hearing the Japanese language, he actually co-wrote Wife of the Spy. Wife of a Spy.
No way.
Yeah, he's the co-screenwriter of it.
So it's like a super team.
Yeah, I mean, Hamaguchi often gets compared to Kiyoshi Kurosawa and Hirokazu Koreeda, who kind of like, became really popular with people with the Shoplifters a couple of years ago. So they all are kind of cut from the same cloth, but Hamaguchi's like slightly younger. He's from a different generation. He's actually closer to our age. He's in his early 40s. I mean, I watched actually Hamaguchi's other movie from last year. I was talking about how disappointed I was with Drive My Car. I watched Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, and I loved it. Like, I thought that was great, and that actually rounds up my top 5. I now have 5 favorite movies from 2021
last year.
Yeah, it was like that was the movie that I needed to just like cap things off. So it was great. I mean, we could discuss it when you've seen it if you want, but that's just my quick cut for that.
I do think we need to put your top 5 on our Twitter.
Okay. Oh yeah. Let's do that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I guess just quick business. We have a Twitter feed at Movie Food Pod. Easy peasy.
Yes.
You'll find it.
Yes, at Movie Food Pod. Just don't forget the pod at the end, because there is another Movie Food. That's why we couldn't do Movie Food.
Yeah, it's kind of popular. But I don't think that person's tweeted or something, right?
Yeah, I guess this could be a quick cut too. Like, I really wish Twitter was more like Tumblr, where if you're inactive on Tumblr, like, they let go of your handle. And it's like, it's open to public domain again. And I think that's what should happen to Twitter too, because also like my personal Twitter handle, I don't mind sharing it, but I have to add a Y to it at the end. It's Astrofishy, because somebody else is Astrofish and they're like inactive as well.
So, the worst.
Yeah. So anyway, but I guess a couple more quick cuts of like just some movies that I saw recently that I liked. One was Cleaners, which was this Filipino movie directed by Glenn Barrett.
Mm.
or Barit. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, but it's a really inventive Filipino movie, and I'm always rooting for Filipino
Yeah.
movies to be good and original. And I got my wish with this movie. Um,
What's it about? Yeah.
it's basically about coming of age in school. Like it takes place over a course of a school year. So if you grew up in the Philippines and went to school in the Philippines, you definitely know these kind of signposts of the year, like Linggo ng Wika, which is like the how would I translate it? The week of language, I guess. So it's like
Mm.
promoting your local language, and then there's all these like folk dance and performances that people do. So it focuses on all these different students who go to the same school. But that's pretty typical and humdrum about it. But what makes this movie really unique is that they tried to do it in a Xerox photocopy style, stop motion style, which is
Whoa.
basically I guess they shot it originally on video, and then they printed out 8 frames out of every like second, I guess, to give it that Xerox look.
Yeah.
And then they hand colored certain frames. So basically each of the main characters has like a color. And
Uh-huh.
so they stand out from all the others because the movie's in black and white, but the main character of each
Oh.
story stands out because they're colored by highlighter. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's
yes.
super creative.
Yeah, it's really
Like,
inventive.
does it kind of look like Waking Life, or is it
Um
kind of its own thing?
it's its own thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've probably seen this effect done in music videos, but never on screen. Like
Wow.
it really was amazing to just see it like
Yeah.
that. And the only reason why I knew about it was also because uh like Letterboxd does like their the year so far, like the halfway point review, and that was like one of the highest rated movies on Letterboxd halfway through the year. And then it's just surprising at the end of the year nobody remembers it.
Oh wow.
Like it's been forgotten. So like I guess it's good to just kind of bring it up again. I mean, it's not a masterpiece. I still think it's kind of a little sentimental and saccharine at times. It doesn't quite work, but yeah, just for the visual
Okay.
experience, it's great.
Well, I
Um,
think this is a prime movie where maybe if I can get around to watching it, then we
mhm.
can, and if I enjoy it, maybe we can do a full ep
Sure.
breaking it
Yeah,
down
yeah, yeah.
because it sounds really interesting and unique, and I'd love to give them a little love, you know.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we can figure it out.
Cool.
So I also saw this animated film called Belle, which is in theaters. I think this is my first new release of the year that I saw.
Hmm.
The first movie I saw to start the year was Tragedy of Macbeth, but that's still technically from last year. So Belle is the first 2022 feature that I saw in the theater. And yeah, it was great. I don't really want to spoil it because it's based on a familiar story, but it's like updated for Gen Z, I
I mean,
guess.
it's called Belle, so it sounds
Yeah,
like is it Beauty and the Beast or
yeah,
is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what it is.
Okay.
It's basically a Beauty and the Beast update for
Okay. Cool.
Gen Z, but it takes place all in the metaverse. It's beautiful. Like yeah, that entire world that they created is
Hmm.
the are the best parts in the movie.
Is it
You know.
family friendly or is it kind of dark?
Yeah, it's a little dark. I would say it's really more for older kids, like
Yeah.
closer to preteens, maybe.
Sure. Okay.
There's nothing really like objectionable in it, but like it's. I mean, those are the ages of the kids in. They seem like they're preteens, early teens.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess another thing just in my quick cuts I want to add is just a little mini rant here,
Okay.
which is what I've been experiencing early on in my movie going experience. Is just I've been mainly going, considering what's going on right now, with COVID cases going up, that most of the theaters I've been going to have been empty. Screenings have been empty.
Hmm.
Um, but yet somehow this is something I just don't get. Like, why would you reserve a seat next to somebody when the entire row is empty?
Wait,
Like,
are you having the experience of someone is like sitting next to you in an empty theater?
yeah. or like the row is mostly empty, and I'm like, what's
Oh,
going on? It's like that meme of that guy with the row of urinals, and he's peeing, and then the guy like pees right next to him,
yeah,
and I'm like, what? And like, because most of these screenings are reserved seating.
yeah,
And I'm usually the first person to reserve a seat. Like when I book my seat, there's nobody around me.
yeah. Where do you usually choose in the
I like
theater?
to sit in the back. In the middle. That's
Yeah,
my favorite spot. I like to like see the entire frame, and I don't like to be craning my head up.
and somebody else is choosing to sit next to you.
Yes, and
That's
it's happened to
bizarre.
me more than once. And the one time, yeah, the first time it happened this year, I saw Red Rocket, which I guess I can add as a quick cut to, but it's just it's an unremarkable movie. It's solid. I
Yeah,
don't really think it's that good.
yeah,
Um, but when I saw that was an empty theater because it was like a 3 o'clock in the
yeah.
afternoon screening. So like nobody's gonna go there. And this guy, like I'm already like my peripheral vision, when the trailers are happening, like I'm already eyeing when people are going up the stairs, and they're getting closer and closer to my row, and I'm just hoping like
Oh
they're
God.
not sitting in the same row. And then he ends up going to my row, and then he plops himself down right next to me, and I'm like looking at both sides of the row, and I'm like, dude, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I look at him, and then he moves over one seat,
Right.
and then I was like,
God.
yeah, it's just it makes no sense to me whatsoever. Um, yeah, but that's been happening. Like a lot of the screenings. Actually, I guess moving on to our next quick cut, with Scream.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, I had booked that also when nobody had booked it. There was actually a couple sitting next to me to my right, and the girl, when she found out that I had showed up for my seat, like
Uh-huh.
she moved over to the other seat, like opposite her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, like you couldn't have just saved that one seat, like you couldn't have booked the seat like one over,
Yeah.
you know because
That's
it's not
bizarre.
like they were waiting and the somebody had booked it who didn't show up, like they moved before the movie even started. So
And was that theater a little more full or
oh yeah, Scream was
uh,
was packed,
oh,
so
okay,
that
there you
was
go.
understandable. But at the same time, it was just like there was still a seat. There ended up being a seat between
That's
us.
pretty cool that you got to see Scream packed. I
Yeah.
remember in 96 seeing the first one in a packed audience and that was
Wow.
really really fun. I remember
Yeah, and that was the thing. I don't like crowds in the theater. I'm just not that kind of guy. I like the movie
yeah.
theater experience, but I thought, wow, this is great. Like going into the movie, I was thinking, man, this is gonna be so good. Like that it's a full house. This
Yeah.
was like 8 o'clock, so a little later in the evening.
Yeah, that's good.
But the crowd just wasn't into it.
That's
They
just,
were
yeah.
like dead silent throughout the entire movie. How was it like in '96? Like
In 96, people were scared. People were
what?
jumping up and there was all I don't know, just seeing it, it's a movie, it kicked off the meta period. It's
Sure.
very self-referential, but it really worked. I remember in the theater when Randy is talking to the TV cuz they're watching Halloween
Yeah.
and he's telling Jamie to turn around and
Yeah.
he's saying turn around like and the killer's behind him.
Right.
I remember the crowd loved that part. Like the crowd was like yelling and screaming and it just really was fun.
Mhm.
I remember not being too scared of Scream, but
Yeah.
the experience was always so fun
Yeah.
that it kind of won me over like that. And then I
Right.
remember seeing Scream 2 and it starts off in a movie theater and the crowd is going nuts at the beginning of Scream 2. I don't know if you remember it.
Mhm.
Like what the setting is like they're going to the premiere
Premiere
of
of
Stab,
yeah, the movie
the
that's
first
based on Scream,
on Scream.
on the
And
events of Scream. Yeah.
but the audience is like a legendary audience, which is funny because it's like I don't. So it's the premiere of Stab. They haven't seen Stab, but they're so excited that they're
Hmm.
like all in ghost face masks. They're running
Right.
around. They're like pretending to murder each other.
Yeah.
Like they're having so much fun, and it made the Scream 2 experience fun, even though like obviously the actual audience wasn't like that. So that is kind of a bummer that for Scream 5 you had a packed audience,
Hmm.
but it seemed
Yeah, no
like
laughs, nothing.
yeah,
Like I was laughing at certain bits and people were just dead silent. I was like, what's going on?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so what'd you think of it? Because I too have seen it.
Yeah, I thought it was enjoyable.
Hmm.
You know, it definitely is, as we were saying, a theater experience. I feel like you
Yeah.
need that crowd, but they have to be into it. You know, if they're not, like, I'm not even sure if the people I saw it with, because this is the interesting thing that it brings up is who is this movie for, right?
Mm,
Like who is it for the longtime fans, who have been following it since, 96, which is now, yeah, an entire generation basically,
yeah.
or is it for, the new generation and for them to get into it and be like, okay, these were the legacy characters and this is going to be, the next generation for you guys. So I guess it kind of falls in between two stools. Um, with that, because you have people who probably have never seen the previous movie, so they don't get most of the jokes.
Right.
Yeah, they have no kind of emotional attachment to the survivors, and you've basically spoiled it too, because, like, I mean, that was part of the thrill of watching each progressive Scream, was like seeing who was gonna make it, because
Right.
it would dwindles down the group of characters that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even, I guess, get the connection between like this new generation, what their relation is to the previous characters, if you haven't seen the previous movies. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree, and I'm fine spoiling this one. I think if
Yeah,
if
yeah.
if anyone hasn't seen Scream, fast forward like a couple of minutes because we're gonna
Right, yeah,
spoil
yeah,
it right
sure.
right
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now. But
Hmm.
for someone who did see the original Scream when I was a teenager, so it's like
Hmm.
that was like our generation or my generation's Halloween. You know, like the
Right.
previous generation loved Halloween through Nightmare, but
Hmm.
I was too young, you know, like to kind of
Yeah,
get
same.
down with those. Like I only saw
Hmm.
those franchises when they were already at like at least movie 6 through 8, you know, where things
Yeah.
get really bad.
Yeah, right.
So Scream was like perfect. I think I was 15
Hmm.
when it came out, and I really loved the
Hmm.
first two. And so this one, because it references the first one so much, and the
Hmm.
fact that they end up at Stu Macher's house, like I
Yeah.
think for someone who's younger who maybe hasn't seen those, that wouldn't mean that much. But for
Hmm.
me, I was like, "Oh my god, they're back at Stu's house!" Like that
Right.
really hit me, and
Hmm.
I got really excited. And I liked that they were in the kitchen and tormenting Sydney in the kitchen
Yeah.
again.
Yeah,
And
even the beats were very similar, like,
yeah,
and even just how the I guess we're spoiling. So there's two
yeah,
killers again, that was a surprise in the first one. And then that one is more psychotic than the other, but
yeah.
of course they've done a gender swap and all these
Hmm.
things. So um
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the biggest weakness I think of the Scream movies is the fact that they're whodunits, and
mhm,
the fact that you're gonna end up with different killers each time.
right.
You have to come up with different motives each time, and
Yeah.
really none of the motives are that satisfying.
Yeah.
It's like the thrill is okay, is trying to figure out as the viewer, okay, who's doing it.
Hmm.
And so once it's revealed, it feels good, but then they have to kind of explain why.
Yeah.
And it's always like lukewarm,
Hmm.
cuz ultimately there's not a real good reason to go on a murder spree. You
No.
know, like and so, you know, Jack Quaid's character and the girl who plays Amber,
Hmm.
the actress who plays Amber is pretty frightening. She was very
Yeah.
mean, very scary, but ultimately none of the motives actually make any sense, or
Yeah. I don't know if you saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
hmm
You saw it?
yeah,
Yeah, so she was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood too. What is her name? Mikey Madison.
Yes.
And it's funny because she meets a similar fate.
She gets burned.
Yeah, exactly. And she's also like a psycho killer, potential
Yeah,
psycho killer in Once
totally.
Upon a Time. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised too if they cast her based on that role, because obviously the time sufficient time has passed since Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Hmm.
But yeah, you're right. It's just there's always that let down, or like all the air out of the room comes out once there's the reveal of the
Right.
killer. It's more about, I think, the enjoyment of that build up towards it. But once it's revealed, it's kind of like okay, it
Right.
kind of goes downhill from there. And I guess that also uh taps into my issue with the movie, and why I don't think it's a masterpiece or anything.
Sure.
It was just pure fluff, enjoyable, but I didn't have no interest in seeing it again. It's just that even though it's self-aware and it's bringing up, it's basically everything coming to a head from the Matrix Revolutions, with that discussion of requels.
Requels. Yeah.
Yeah, but then at the same time, it's like, okay, you're aware that you're doing this, but you're not doing anything to change expectations. Like, I was just thinking how radical the movie could have been if, yeah, one, there was no motive. Like, you don't understand what the motive was. It was just like
Yeah.
it's left unexplained. And then two, I mean, they murdered a legacy character, but it's like Star Wars, with Force Awakens, they kill Han. So um
T- Wow. Totally. It's
yeah,
totally
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. A new lead as well that's very similar to the previous lead. There's a lot of
Hmm.
but yeah, if they had basically um they had killed the main girl. What was her name?
Sam.
Yeah, Sam. If Sam was like murdered like midway through the movie, then I
Yeah.
would be like, oh, okay, like all bets are off now.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have the final girl, and you're now like trying to do something different with it. Because yeah, also the other thing is that uh, even though Kevin Williamson, who wrote the original Scream, he kind of dropped off after the second one. I think the third one, somebody else took over the screenwriting duties. The first four were made by Wes Craven.
Hmm.
And Wes Craven had nothing else to prove basically at that point, because he had made the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, People Under the Stairs, The Hills Have Eyes, like really terrifying movies. So for him to kind of have this uh, you know, late career or mid career surge with the Scream movies was amazing, to just kind
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
him to make himself over that way. But yeah, at the same time, like, yeah, that's just what I felt with every succeeding movie. It was diminishing returns, and to the point that, yeah, I've forgotten the third and the fourth movies. Yeah, it's like I don't,
Right.
especially the fourth one, which you say you liked. You liked the fourth one?
Well, yeah. So the third one was probably the weakest because it's like it's the furthest from the first. Like it's like all
Mm-hmm.
adults and they're on a movie set.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so it's just like what makes it good is like being in Woodsboro
Mm-hmm.
with a
Yes.
group of teens, and it's like scarier.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
with four, they went back to Woodsboro with a group of teens,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was also a lot gorier. Four was probably the goriest, like
Really?
next to one,
Mm-hmm.
because like two and three were three was really bloodless because I think it
Mm-hmm.
was after Columbine. Two
Oh,
had a
right.
couple. Two had a couple good, gory scenes, but one,
Yeah.
has, Drew Barrymore and her boyfriend's death at the beginning, and then
Right.
when Rose McGowan gets caught in the
Yeah.
garage.
And I mean, the
You know,
finale with Billy and Stu
yeah,
was also pretty bloody.
yeah,
When they're cutting
exactly,
each other. And
yeah. So four had a lot of. It was kind of the return to gore a little
mm-hmm.
bit, but yeah, I also get that it's like it's not as memorable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my biggest issue with this one, and JR sent me a text.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "So many stabs, but not enough deaths." And
Right.
that's kind of how it felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was this ghost face was like stabbing everybody, like
Mm-hmm.
and stabbing fast, almost
Yeah.
like prison stabs, like.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
the actual body count was pretty low. There was actually a lot of survivors in this one. And then I guess
true.
the one twist that they added in this one from the previous is that, all the screams start off with an opening scene that leads to a death of a known person. And this one, it looked like the actress was going to die, but she survives.
Right.
So like that's like the one twist that they added. The whole time I was thinking, will there be a third killer, or like,
right.
Like will there, like how will they make this one different? And then so I think you're right. The fact that there ended up only really being two. It kind of ends very similar to the first, to be honest.
Yeah, and I was waiting for like that turn, even like as it was wrapping up, like they were all like being dispatched on their ambulances, like that there was the killer's still alive, or there's another killer,
Right?
like that final reveal, but it just didn't happen. Another thing, I just looked it up too. The reason why 4 is better than 3 is because Kevin Williamson came back and he wrote 4. So yeah, 3, if I remember, was written by Aaron Kruger, which was just funny to me because it's like they hired a screenwriter with the Kruger last name to write for Wes Craven. But yeah, I mean he just did like a workman script, and it just wasn't very good.
No.
And I guess I have another like hot take when it comes to Scream, because Scream was supposed to be a horror comedy. Like people, find it funny. I actually find Scary Movie to be funnier than Scream.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, but also I love like the Wayans Brothers movies. Like all of them just make me laugh. So
Yeah.
I've never seen any of the Scary Movie sequels, though. I've only seen the first one.
Yeah. Like the way I've heard it is like, so if like whatever the first slasher is, whether it's Psycho or something before, is that Halloween. Okay, and I might get this wrong. Halloween is like an homage to Psycho. Scream is like a satire of Halloween,
right?
And then and then Scary Movie is a parody. Of Scream.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like different definitions of how they kind of all flow.
Yeah, and I mean, Scary Movie would not exist if it wasn't for Scream. Whereas I feel like those previous ones, like they still have their own place. Scary Movie only exists in a world where Scream exists.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the irony is the original Scream's original name was Scary Movie.
Right.
That was the name that Williamson had on the original script.
Yeah.
So while you were watching it, could you guess who the killers were?
Yeah, I had a hunch. Even when I had just seen the trailers, I was just like, yeah, Jack Quaid's the killer. Like he was the most recognizable face.
Yeah, totally.
Of all the new people, and I was like, yeah, he's got to be the killer. Like he's perfect to play like a psychopath.
Yeah. And he was perfect, and he was also perfect as the red herring, as like kind of the guy. They put him in a lot of scenes with Ghostface acting scared and just getting his arm cut.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like there was like enough plausible deniability there, but yeah, he was definitely my first guess. And then the Amber character too was like, I think one of the most clever things they did with Amber was that they put her in the first kill by like Tara, who's the girl who gets the Ghostface call. She's getting texted from Amber.
Right.
And then Ghostface sends her a video of Amber kind of saying, hey, if you don't answer these questions, I'm going to kill Amber. So it's kind of a clever way of like in the viewer's minds kind of trying to eliminate Amber, but it was her the whole time.
Right. Yeah. It was like a diversion, but that does make you wonder, like, was Jack Quaid's character shooting that video? Like he was in Woodsboro from Modesto. Like we don't actually know where Woodsboro is, right? It's like just some fictional NorCal town.
Yeah, it's like in like I imagine it's like in Marin County somewhere.
Right, yeah, somewhere there. Yeah, it kind of looks like it.
But yeah, I guess Jack Quaid could have been both there and then in Modesto. Sure.
Yeah. It was just gone for like an evening.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the other thing, it was a very physical and strong Ghostface. Like I noticed like Ghostface could really stab through things and can like when someone would catch Ghostface's arm, Ghostface could push through it and really hurt people. And so it was kind of, the actress who plays Amber, isn't that intimidating. So it was a little like, so what, was this actress like that strong and like murdering everybody? It's just one of those parts of the Scream movies that never quite like adds up.
Yeah, and I was also thinking just in terms of that confrontation with David Arquette with Dewey in the hospital. It's like, because it's obviously her, because Jack Quaid is like escaping
in the elevator.
In the elevator, but she
takes 3 bullets.
Well, yeah, she's wearing a vest, but at the same time, it's like she's made to look really tall and intimidating, which she isn't when you see her without the mask. So it's like, what, she was wearing stilts as well.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make any sense. Like,
I think that's the part of the Screams that you just kind of have to like shrug your shoulders and enjoy it. Is the fact that everyone who plays Ghostface, they can disappear in an instance.
Yeah.
They are very strong and tall until they're revealed.
Right.
And also, they can take a bullet. They can take all like really take a beating. Like the other part, at the end, the survivors, you have Gail, Sydney, and Sam. They like Gail got shot in the stomach, and Sam and Sydney both got stabbed in the gut. And they're like totally fine at the end.
Yeah, she just needed a bandage.
Yeah,
that's it. She's good to go. Yeah, and not
God.
even stitches to close up the wound. Oh man. Yeah, and just like they managed to summon the strength in the final fight. Like, I was like, did Sydney get stabbed? Because she's like fighting pretty well here. Yeah, it's like
totally. Oh, and then the other just to wrap up this. This is definitely a quick hit. I mentioned James A. Janice's YouTube channel Dead Meat on the last ep. In Scream, there's a scene where Jack Quaid's character is watching a YouTube clip of Stab 8, and it's like a parody of his account.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, sweet. So that was like meta for movie food. It was like I was watching watching a movie with a YouTube clip that movie food had talked about.
Amazing. What a weird coincidence.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah.
So
all right.
I think overall I liked Scream more than you, but I also agree with your analysis. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, if people are brave enough to go to the theater to watch it for more than one reason, go see it. I mean, there's nothing else playing right now. I keep thinking about it too, because January tends to be that month where they just dump movies, and most of them are pretty bad. I barely go to the movie theater in January. This was a good January movie. It seems like that's what they're doing now. The studios seem to be releasing a lot of horror movies in January.
Interesting.
So it was the trend last year, or not last year, the year before that. Yeah, because last year movie theaters were still closed.
Right.
They didn't actually reopen until March last year. And I had to like rack my brain too, of like, what was the first movie I watched when movie theaters reopened? And then I remembered it was Nobody.
That's right. Yeah.
Which nobody talks about anymore, ironically enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all these movies, like, do you have an Excel spreadsheet? Like, what's your system?
I just use Letterboxd. Letterboxd just makes it easier, and it's got a fun interface, so it's like, and then there's a community aspect to Letterboxd too, so you get to see what your people you follow, like what their ratings or their reviews of the movie is.
I guess I gotta
Letterboxd is my main system.
I gotta make an account. Is it free?
Yeah, it's totally free. There are like, paywalls, like payment tiers if you want certain features, but I don't really find any use for them.
Okay.
They're really more for hardcore, I guess.
Yeah.
Cinephiles or people who really, it's like their life to basically log movies.
I have a buddy. I have a buddy who's like watched, like over the pandemic, watched every movie released in 1995, and then I think he's moved on to 1996. So yeah.
Okay.
I know a couple.
He should have started a year earlier because 94 was a really good movie year.
Yeah.
Yeah, he should go back after he's done with
Yeah.
96, go back to 94
Yeah.
because he's missing out. Like
That's right.
94 was an amazing movie
Yeah.
year. Yeah, especially because I want him to watch Satan Tango,
Satan
which
Tango.
for people who know what that movie what that movie is, it's a 7.5 hour
Oh God.
Hungarian film that came out in 94. So he needs to see that. If he's gonna
All
be a
right.
year completist, he needs to see Satan Tango.
I'll let him know. All right.
Um yeah, yeah.
All right. So
But yeah. I mean, I'm sure he should have a letterbox because yeah, it
yeah.
just makes it easy. They have a way of you can look at your movies, by rating, by the
Mhm.
order that they were released,
Oh, cool.
by the order that you saw them in,
Yeah.
and you can make lists too. Yeah, I have a few lists. I think we should even just start a movie food
List.
um letterbox because a lot of movie podcasts actually have an official letterbox
Yeah.
profile.
Let's do it.
So
We're
yeah,
we're
so
official.
yeah, we can start with what we're gonna discuss with this episode.
Yeah.
We can start with movies we've talked about.
Yeah. So
So
so yeah, if we're moving on to the first film, this was a movie that I grew up. I think I first saw it when I was again in that 95, 96 era. So I was
mhm,
about 15, 16. And this is a movie that I have very fond memories of. I don't know if it holds up.
mhm.
So I'm really curious to
Did you
see.
watch it again?
I did scrub through it. Yeah,
Okay.
recently. And so I'm curious to get your input on it. Of course, this is Snake in the Eagle's Shadow. It's a Jackie Chan
Yes.
classic. It was released,
Mhm.
I looked it up, March 1st, 1978.
Yes.
So,
Which was a crazy year.
yeah, this is a big year. Is this the same
Mhm.
year as Halloween 78?
Yes, but I mean, just in terms of Jackie's filmography, it's the same year as Drunken Master, and he had 7 roles. I looked it up. He had 7 roles in 1978.
Wow.
That's insane. Like
Yeah.
what a clip, even if he had shot those like in the year previous, like,
Hmm.
it's still back to back to back, like
Right.
just working.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And just for a little background, yeah. So in 1978, I'm not alive yet, but my mom and dad had just were about to be married in 2 months. So yeah, that's just a little family background.
Wow. So they got
So
married.
yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm curious, yeah, what are your just general thoughts?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I
Nice.
and I
Nice.
went in like I guess with yeah, very low
Sure.
expectations because when you had mentioned the title, I thought I had seen it before, but I actually mistook it for Fearless Hyena,
Mm.
which I didn't really respond to as much. And Fearless Hyena actually I looked it up, came out the year after this,
Yeah.
you know. Um I mean, I'll fully admit, like, I guess in terms of my background, I haven't seen that many Jackie Chan films, but every time I see one, I always usually enjoy it.
Hmm.
And also I had no idea that we haven't even mentioned who the director is. It's Yen Yu Wu Ping.
Yep.
Like I had no idea that he was actually a director. I just thought he was an action choreographer because of the Matrix, and
Yeah.
I was like, wow, they really like got this guy. And this isn't actually the first film of his I've seen. I saw this other movie called Dreadnought.
Mm.
And I can't remember who was in it. I think he was a famous star back in his day, but obviously not on the caliber of Jackie, but he was
Right.
still incredible. And Dreadnought was amazing. Like I was blown away by Dreadnought. And I think this is on par with
Ooh.
Dreadnought. Maybe Dreadnought is a little more, I guess, artistic in a
Hmm.
way, and this is more kind of silly and campy at times.
Yeah.
Um, but still, like, it's just Wu Ping's like artistry is
Yeah.
incredible. Like, I have like kind of a ranking of my favorite martial arts directors, and he's definitely, I think, in the top 5.
Yeah.
And I think that's the amazing thing with martial arts, especially cinema, because there are these directors who are legacy directors who've made like incredible filmographies. A
Hmm.
lot of them were for the Shaw brothers.
Yeah.
And those who have seen Kill Bill, they've seen that Shaw Brothers logo. That's where Tarantino stole it from. um, so yeah, they were just this company that just churned out all these martial arts movies, and at a rapid clip, and to see how like incredibly like artistic they are, and how you can even distinguish between the directors is amazing.
Hmm.
But the thing is, yeah, if you've made one classic, I feel as a martial arts director, you're set. That's
Yeah.
really it. You only need to make one. That's it. And yeah, and I would probably put Dreadnought over this movie,
Sure.
but I still definitely enjoyed it a
Yeah.
lot. Like there's like you're familiar probably with a lot of the martial arts tropes.
Sure.
And I always enjoyed to seeing these, like the loser learns, you know
Yeah.
like this is one of my favorite martial arts tropes, or like
Yeah.
the expert who pretends not to know kung fu. Like
Hmm.
that's another one that
That's in this one.
I
Yeah.
really like. Yeah, and then just even highlighting the different martial arts styles,
Yeah.
and I mean, that's where the title comes from,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. That's a big part of the
Hmm.
movie is the whole styles. And um, from what I understand, this might have been his directorial debut. I'll have to double
Oh
check that.
wow. Okay.
I think this. So and then
Hmm.
and really the back like the historical background that I know is that this is the movie that really put Jackie Chan on the map. Like this, and then he quickly followed up with
Wow.
Drunken Master, was what separated him from whatever that mid tier actor was to okay, this guy's a star because
Hmm.
it showcased his martial arts, but then also his ability to be funny. And it's like it's maybe not
Yes.
it's not laugh out loud funny, but it's definitely goofy. And
Oh,
it's
I thought it was. I thought I was howling.
oh
I
good.
thought it was
Oh good.
hilarious. I mean,
Oh,
especially the final fight when he
mm.
like starts to put everything together,
Yeah.
and he kind of, he's he realized like the missing link was the cat
The
claw, and I
cat's
was like,
claw.
oh my god, and all the yeah the,
The cat
all
sounds.
the
Yeah.
cat like shrieking
Yeah.
in the fight. I was howling in that
Okay.
last fight.
Okay,
and
good.
and just even that contrast, talking about fighting styles, because the final boss that he encounters is basically this guy who's like pompous, and he takes himself so
Yeah.
seriously, and then Jackie's just like this goofy dude,
Yeah.
and to see him beat him is just
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, so
Yeah.
the thing that's always baffling to me is, in these kind of set period movies in, ancient China, like, why do the styles hate each other so much? The two main plots are that the Eagle's Claw is trying to get rid of everyone who knows Snake Fist. And then there are these two rival schools that for some reason hate
Hmm.
each other, and they're trying to steal each other's students and then get in fights. And it's
Hmm.
never really explained why any of that is happening. It's just people don't like each other. And I guess that's just human nature to some extent, but it's
Yeah.
just like why does the Eagle's Claw hate Snake Fist so much? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you can even see it carry through with Cobra Kai. I don't know if you've been watching Cobra Kai on
Hmm.
Netflix. Like it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
They've just moved it to the valley. That's basically it. It's still like rival schools going up against each other, saying that their
Right.
style is better than the other. And this one, it's not even rooted in culture.
Hmm.
It's just the kind of uh, motivation for a lot of the people to join these schools is because they need to learn self-defense.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just hilarious to me. I mean, you probably find it funny too, being from the valley, how they make it seem like karate is so like huge in the valley that
Dude,
it
that
dominates the
that's
valley.
it's so
Like,
funny
it's
because
on everybody's mind.
really what dominates in the valley is like actual gang violence and like and like at one
Mhm.
point maybe like
Right.
breakdance crews or something, but yeah, no one's doing actual
Yeah.
karate.
Yeah, JR was telling me about like how when his parents moved to the valley, like there was a real gang
Yeah.
that was like just down the street.
Yeah, the
So-
the house that they moved into when they first moved was on Langdon, and there was a Langdon Street gang, and it was one of those things where it's like they didn't know. It was just a nice affordable house, But luckily,
Right. That's the reason why it was affordable. Yeah.
they were able to kind of
Man.
navigate around it and eventually move. But
Right.
but yeah. But so
Yeah.
speaking of
That's
Jr.,
wild.
this is
Hmm.
he's obviously he's our cousin, part of the Filipino Time
Hmm.
Pod, and one of the reasons why we watched this, or
Hmm.
I guess the reason why I first saw this was he had it on VHS. It was his brother's,
Ah.
and his brother had it, I think, in his closet somehow buried, and we found it. We just happened upon it, and it was the one with it that was dubbed in English. And so I think that's the one that
Right.
you watched. And so there's something so funny about the dubbing.
I didn't watch the dub version. Sorry,
Oh, you
I
didn't?
didn't
Okay.
watch the dub version. I
Okay,
actually
good.
saw. Yeah, but the funny thing is that it's still dubbed, even though it's in Cantonese.
Uh huh.
Like it's still dubbed in Cantonese. Like the sound isn't synced. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't live sound that they recorded.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but I can imagine how much funnier it would have been
Yeah.
with the dubbing.
The dubbing
Yeah.
is amazing. And so if you want to watch it,
Do
the
you
English
remember anything in particular that
will just
in the
so
dubbing?
when the fat kid, so there's a fat kid who's like a prospective student at
Mm.
these schools, and so he comes
Yes.
in. He's the son
Yeah,
of
he was like he's
the
the son of a patriarch
magistrate.
or something like that, or like so a magistrate. Yeah, that's right.
And so the way he's dubbed, the way he sounds is like, I've seen people break bricks. Fantastic. Can your men break bricks? It's just like, it's
Yeah.
so over the top. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. Yeah. So just as kids, me, JR, and Jonathan, and we would just quote all the dumb things from this movie.
Mhm.
Oh, the other person who was really quotable was the Russian priest. So like,
Oh yes. Oh my god.
so he comes running in and says, Jesus says, to turn the other cheek. And then the guy slaps him and he's like, Jesus, he's a sinner. So yeah, so just all these scenes were just like so fun. The characters in this movie are unbelievable. Like they're so memorable. Like so there's Jackie. At the beginning, there's like that Master Lee who's like kind of treats him really
Yes.
poorly and pretends to be good at martial arts, but he's not very good. There's the magistrate, and the fat kid, the priest, Mr. Lung, the guy who like tries to break the bricks and then hurts his hand and has to like rub the ointment on his hand.
Oh yeah. Oh, I wanted to mention him too. I wanted to highlight him because that actor is Chi Ling Shu,
Okay.
and the reason why I remember him is because of Kung Fu Hustle.
Oh,
Like he's
yeah.
one of the old masters in Kung Fu Hustle.
Yeah.
And it's even funnier because I think he's like the laundromat guy, I think. And he's gay in
Mhm.
Kung Fu Hustle. And the rings reminded me of him,
Yeah.
It was just like the rings around his arms. So I was like, oh
Totally.
wow, that's a like nice callback from Stephen Chow,
Totally.
to cast him.
And then
Yeah.
for me, the other memorable part are just all the different set pieces. Like
Mhm.
like I think maybe the best scene, there's an early scene around 30 minutes where the old man is training Jackie Chan.
Yes.
He asks him to grab the bowl. And he basically has a rice bowl. He's trying to cheer him up. And Jackie can't grab the bowl. And the choreography is like really good.
Yes.
It's really skillful. It's fun. And then at the end, I think that leads to like the first training session where the old man leaves while Jackie's asleep, but then leaves like footprints, like a pattern for him to try to match. And so it's kind of, it's very silly that Jackie all of a sudden now, like just from looking at the footprints, can now do like all the footwork it takes, to do like the martial arts, but it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, the training sequences in these martial arts movies are some of my favorite things. When that hits in a movie, I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is amazing. But it's just ironic that my favorite martial arts movie doesn't have a training sequence in it because it's basically two people who are already good.
Yeah.
And but it does have this sequence where they both pretend like they don't know
Right.
actually, or they're hiding it. This movie also has a very funny English title. The English title is Dirty Ho, and it stars Gordon Liu,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. Like
Oh,
it's
good.
just such a remarkable, and I was just thinking in the context of my favorite martial arts movies, because I'm a bit of a latecomer. If
Yeah.
you discovered it as a kid, like I knew about Enter the Dragon and
Sure.
and some of those movies, but that's already kind of westernized. But
Yeah.
I really actually only started to get into martial arts movies probably maybe I want to say 5 years ago.
Hmm.
I just like went on a summer binge and I tried to get my hands on every martial arts movie that I could think of that had like a great reputation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I even watched them a lot of them dubbed because I just was such a fan of Wu Tang and
Yes.
like I loved like all the samples that they were
Mm,
using. And there's some purists who are like saying you should never watch these movies dubbed. That's like terrible. Why are you watching them
sure.
dubbed? But I love it. It's like part of the experience for me.
Totally. It's
You
funny.
know.
It's funny that you mentioned Wu Tang. I was also really
Mhm.
big around this time into that Wu Tang Forever album because I think that came out also in the
Sure.
mid '90s somewhere. And so to
Yeah,
see,
it was like 97.
so
Hmm.
to see this movie, and then this kicked off maybe a 2 year run where me and Jer similarly
Hmm.
we would drive to a rental store almost every weekend, try to rent two movies and watch them for like 2 years straight. So it was,
Nice.
and part of the appeal was, oh, these movies have in it these sounds that I'm hearing in these Wu Tang songs,
Yeah, right.
and
Exactly. And they're beautiful. Like,
yeah, and it works. It makes sense. These movies have way more fights in them than Enter the Dragon or
mhm.
some of these other kind of
Yeah,
more westernized
for sure.
martial arts films, and so it was just like it was so fun, and that's what I love about Snake is that it's so fun.
Yeah, it's not just even I think the choreography of the fights too
Yeah,
and the amount of them. It's how they're shot. Like that's what really like blew my mind seeing them
yeah,
around 5 years ago was just man, there's really uh like an acknowledgement of space of where everybody is and like where to put the camera, to get that shot that they want to like get a hit across or like, when somebody uh like exits the frame, like where does the camera move next? Like,
yeah.
it was just so wonderful. Even just the zooms, like the way that they utilize zooms as well,
Hmm.
are just yeah, there was nothing like it at that time. Like there was just really this peak, like in the late 70s, early 80s of these movies, these Shaw Brothers movies that were just amazing.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah, and this movie it kind of had it all. Just like you're saying, there's kind of two kinds of martial arts films. There's like the beginner who doesn't know anything, who has to train and then get good, and then there's the martial arts film
yeah,
that's a little more that you kind of see a little more now because I think viewers don't have the patience to watch someone train anymore. Is
right.
where the person already starts off an expert. Like the
Hmm.
Jason Bourne or the John Wick, where it's just like
Right.
you don't have to worry about a training. Like Ong Bak,
Yeah, yeah,
he's already dropping knees
yeah.
and elbows on everybody.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, or the raid movies,
yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah, for sure. I mean, even just going back to the different styles of martial arts and how they're highlighted, relating
Yeah,
it to hip hop. That's really what it also felt like with Wu Tang. Like it was all these different styles, like all of them, and they would mention it in the lyrics.
yeah,
Like the Tiger verse Crane, and Tiger style. You so all of those things were being mentioned in the Wu Tang tracks, and I guess I like making these hip hop connections because I mean that really the RZA and the Wu Tang really pioneered it, and there are other groups that started copying it. Um, is that yeah? Again, also in hip hop, you only really need one album that's great to solidify your legacy.
yeah.
Similar to martial arts, like the filmmakers only need to make one, and that's it. You're set.
Yeah, just sometimes even just one great verse. I remember on that Wu Tang Forever,
Mhm,
just like I still remember just a couple of the verses. Just they just so stand out, and like that's all it takes.
for sure.
Um, the other thing I wanted to point out, I don't know if you've ever played Tekken 3. There's a character.
I don't think so. No.
Well, anyways, there's I think it's Lei Wu Long. I think so.
Yeah, I'm familiar with
He's a
that character.
character who's like the surrogate for Jackie Chan, and basically there's a lot of in his narrative in the video game. It shows a lot of the training scenes from this movie, like that scene where Jackie Chan is training to grab
Oh.
the eggs off of that stick.
Mm.
Like all the bamboo poles. And then there's also a training scene where he has like his arms in like a ring. Anyways, a lot of those are in
Wow.
Tekken 3. So it's just
Man,
it's just
I'll have to check that out. Yeah,
it's just iconic training scene, I guess essentially.
for sure. Yeah, I guess I'll have to check that out because yeah, the Tekken I play the most is 5.
Oh,
and I'm not very good at it.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I just had it for my PS2, so that's why.
Yeah.
And I love the graphics. That's really more my thing with it. Oh yeah, just another kind of I guess trope of martial arts movies that I like, which might not even be intentional. It's just that it just happens that way. That like sometimes people meet each other and they don't know each other and they fight for the first time. Like it's a way of meeting each other. It's like getting to know each other is the fight, And I've always loved that. Like that's one of the ways that it's like, oh, you get to know this person, and it obviously it's not verbal at all. It's all just their style, and you're anticipating what they're doing,
Their
and
reactions.
it's that dance, and I mean, I've always loved that Jackie's been very open about who his influences are. And that he loves Buster Keaton and Gene Kelly. Those are his two main influences.
Yeah, and like this movie, you see a decent amount of his, of that influence. You see it more in later films like Project A, and maybe even Dragons Forever, and Drunken Master 2. But
yes.
I mean, if we want to go on a Jackie Chan run, we can. I definitely have.
Could, yeah. I mean,
I have my top 5, but
yeah, I have a lot of gaps, so definitely. But I would say Drunken Master 2 is pretty close to the top for me. And yeah, we can get into that because that also would lead to my favorite martial arts directors because Lau Kar Long actually co-directed that with Jackie.
Oh.
And it was like this great thing where Lau Kar Long and this master and then Jackie Chan coming together in a movie, but it actually didn't work. Lau Kar Long actually left the movie midway through, and Jackie, that's why they have the co-director credit, because Jackie just finished the movie without him, because I think they disagreed on a lot of things, which is a shame, So I don't know what part of Lau Kar Long actually survived in the final product, but I mean, Lau Kar Long directed Dirty Ho, so that says something.
That's so. I mean,
he's just.
I've seen a lot of Jackie Chan films, but I have a lot of holes in the other films. So I think that would be a fun season if we do a martial arts season. It's just like where we just
I
fill out all these
definitely
holes.
Get into that. I've actually been meaning to revisit a couple of movies because I got 8 Pole Diagram. Oh no, 8 Diagram Pole Fighter.
Okay.
On Blu-ray recently, and I've been meaning to rewatch it. That's another Lau Kar Long movie.
Cool.
It's probably his darkest one. And then I watched this movie in Shu Kui and Jackie. And it's later Jackie. It's like 90s, like just before probably Rush Hour Jackie. It's like one of his last Hong Kong movies, but it was really charming. I'm blanking on the title now. But yeah, it was an enjoyable movie, and it has like a great fight between Jackie and a guy who was like a longtime member of the stunt team, and like he's kind of giving him props. Good. And I love the narratives behind the fights too. So yeah, we can definitely get into that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Like I'm just looking over my notes. I only have kind of one other note on this movie, is that so the key part is Jackie witnesses a cat fighting a snake and has the realization of adding the cat's claw to the snake fist. And that's ultimately how he defeats the eagle's claw. I don't know if you noticed, like I read this in the production notes on IMDb, that I guess you can see the cat has like a rope or like a string tied to it so that it would stay and fight the snake. So it's a
Oh man.
yeah, so it's a little bit of like what one of those like you couldn't do that anymore. And I'm sure if you
Hmm.
watch the movie,
Sure.
if they re-released it, they like probably severely edited down that scene. Because I remember watching it on the
Yeah.
tape that JR had, and there was a lot of scenes of the
And you
cat
could see it.
batting at that snake, and and so it's
Hmm.
a lot of things that wouldn't fly anymore.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 You definitely like. There's definitely gonna be like an animal rights
yeah, yeah.
consultant on
Sure.
every set. Would not allow that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you can
Wow. Okay.
tie a string to the cat. And then the only other note is, I guess,
Hmm.
at the last fight when he's fighting the final boss, the boss says something about smashing out his teeth or breaking Jackie's teeth. And I guess at some point he actually accidentally did knock out one of his teeth, and you can see at the last couple scenes, like there's like a gap in Jackie's teeth.
Oh, that was legit.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
wow. Okay.
So yeah,
Damn.
Snake in
Yeah.
the Eagle's
Well,
shadow.
not the last bone he would broke. Yeah.
No, oh no, no, no.
Right.
Well, cool.
All right. Okay. Well, yeah. Thanks for recommending this movie. I definitely enjoyed watching it.
Cool.
So yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I'm happy you enjoyed it. It still holds up, so
Mhm.
that feels good. So the movie that I watched, that's one of your faves. So you basically gave me a list of like 5, and I watched all the trailers. And so the movie I
Mhm.
picked was Paterson from 2016, starring Adam Driver. And I guess before I get into it, kind of what like where were you in 2016? Like what do you remember about watching it?
Oh man. Okay. All right. So I mean, I guess like a lot of people, I had a terrible 2016. Everything that could go wrong went wrong for me in 2016.
Oh, yes.
Um, yeah, I don't really want to get into the details, but I guess that definitely helped shape what led me to this movie. So I guess full disclosure is I'm a big fan of Jim Jarmusch. Like pretty
Mhm.
much any movie that Jim Jarmusch comes out with, I'll go see. Um yeah, and what when I was actually giving you the list and what I mentioned, maybe it was in the previous episode, my favorite movie is Stranger Than Paradise. That's
Mm.
also by Jim Jarmusch.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's funny that you ended up picking this movie, which is I think on a par. I've probably seen it more than Strangers in Paradise at this point. So this came out like on the very last Friday of 2016. Like it was
Mm.
December 28th. I'll never forget that because I was like anticipating this movie. Like I'd seen like images from it, and I was just excited about it. And they Amazon who produced this, who also kind of had a very interesting like first year of producing movies.
Yeah.
So this was one of the first movies that they ever produced. Uh yeah, they just dumped it on December 28th when nobody's watching movies, and
Yeah.
I saw it in New York City when it's like super freezing cold. Like nobody's going out to go see a movie, at this point in the
In New
year.
York. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I was in New York City at that time. And yeah, I can probably talk about like the ripple effect of the movie after we discuss it, but I'll
Yeah.
just talk about what led
Sure.
leading up to seeing it. So it was playing actually in a movie theater that's now closed down, sadly, the landmark Sunshine, which was like it was a landmark. It was iconic. This the facade of the building was amazing. It was like a multiplex, but they only showed mainly art films. And yeah, so I bought the ticket opening day, went to see it, but I didn't realize too, this was one of my big regrets, that um the earlier screening, if I'd gone to the earlier screening, Jim Jarmusch actually did a Q&A in person,
Oh.
and I missed it because I went to the later
Yeah.
screening in the evening, but the afternoon one, he actually did a Q&A. So I'm like, damn, I was bummed that I missed it. But it was great. Like the screening was the theater was fairly empty. And yeah, I should just say also, leading up to this, even though I am a fan of Jim Jarmusch, I really don't feel like up to that point I had seen anything that really blew me away by him for
Mhm.
a while. I think the only movie of his before then that I still kind of liked was uh probably, and I wasn't even sure of it, was The Limits of Control. And I have a friend, Marcus. He loves Jim Jarmusch too, but he hates Limits of Control. A lot of people don't like Limits of Control, but I liked it. But it was also like I had reservations. But if I was really tracking back to like a Jim Jarmusch film I truly loved, I would even have to go all the way back to like Dead Man from 1995. Like that was like the last Jim Jarmusch movie that I was like, okay, this is great. I'm gonna be watching this, for years to come. But none of them felt like that. Like I just felt like in the 2000s, he was kind of um I don't want to say he was going through the motions, but the films just didn't hit me the same way. But yeah, so I was like pleasantly surprised by Paterson. Like I was so blown away by it. I was just like, man, this is incredible. And I wasn't a fan of Adam Driver too, so this movie made me a believer. And I ended up going back like 2 days later and watching it again.
Oh, good.
Like I was like, yeah, let me buy another ticket and watch it, because I was just like, yeah, I need to make sure that this is actually great, because it's
Yeah.
that feeling after you've seen a movie where it's like recency bias, whatever it is that you're feeling right after a movie, you still need to process it. But I was like, I need to watch this again. I really need to make sure that this is a masterpiece.
Yeah. And so when you walked in the first
Mhm.
time, you weren't necessarily expecting it. You didn't know much about it.
No, yeah, it was just like the premise that there was this bus driver who wrote poetry, and that was it. And I actually thought that was like based on a real story for some reason. I don't know why,
It sounds
but
real enough. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That there's this bus driver, and yeah, and then we can get into it. But yes, and then I ended up actually watching it one more time
Mhm.
after that. Like I took a girl on a date to go see it with me,
Nice.
and she loved it too,
Oh, good.
so I was like, man, this is a keeper. But yeah, obviously, I'm not seeing her anymore. But yeah, it was, that day though, yeah, she loved it,
Good.
and I was like, yeah. So
Well, that's good. All right. So I watched the trailer, and so from watching the trailer, I tried to guess what was going to be in it. So this is what I wrote down. It's about a bus driver. He has wisdom to pass on to the passengers.
okay.
I guess I guess that he has kind of a violent past, but he knows how to be happy in the moment, and then something tragic happens to a kid. That was just like my guesses,
okay.
because like I was trying, because like it's kind of mysterious just from looking at the trailer. Well, what's the
Yes.
movie about?
Yeah, and it has this incredible instrumental track playing on the trailer too, which is not really highlighted in the movie, but the track is called "I'm Still a Man." I'm blanking on the name of the artist, but it's one of those rare ones where there's a vocal version and then there's an instrumental version of it, and that's what's used in the trailer, and it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think ultimately, I think just kind of getting into my general thoughts, I think because one, I tried to guess what was in it, and I guessed all these kind of things like
You were close.
yeah,
You got close.
I got
on certain things.
close-ish. But then also too, knowing that this was one of your favorite films, I think I went in with a slightly elevated
Oh, man.
perception,
Okay.
and so I
Yeah.
think I kind of intentionally self-sabotaged it, and I ended up
yeah.
like because it goes, so it's broken down, I think
It's a week.
I think it's a week.
It's a week in his life.
By
basically.
so through Thursday I was like, this is awesome. I like it. It's super super cozy, really relaxing movie,
right.
really easy to kind of get behind. It's just kind of a day in the life, or it's 4 days in the life at that point. All fairly similar. He's very happy, very comfortable, but then I kept expecting the shoe to drop, like something to happen,
Right.
or to find out the reason why he's so happy is because he had a tragic incident in the military, or they lost a kid, and so that's why that they're kind of childless. And then his his partner is also kind of, she paints her dresses, she paints the curtains, and so I was looking at it through the lens of like, all right, is something wrong with her? Like, so unfortunately, I couldn't just take it at face value, which is kind of where where it ends. It ends very much like the way it starts, where it's just like, no, these are people that have love. They
Mm-hmm.
create poetry. They enjoy the moment. Yeah, why not paint the drapes and paint your dress? And why not make cupcakes and sell them? And why not write poetry and
Mm-hmm.
and enjoy your life driving the bus and enjoy your life
Yeah.
in Paterson? And it's like all these kind of ideas that are really comforting. But if you're like, there's a little bit of like, have I been conditioned in watching a movie to think something's going to happen?
Yeah.
Like some shoe is going to drop. And so, unfortunately, I think I fell into that. And so, in watching it, I ended up at the end kind of being like, did I miss something?
Yeah.
Because I was waiting for that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is some tragedy at the end. I mean, this movie's been out for 5 years or so now, almost 6 years. So if you haven't seen it, I mean, I still feel like most people haven't, because every time I mention it, nobody is like, "What, Patterson?" Like, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime."
Like, well,
um,
what's the tragedy?
his notebook gets chewed up by Marvin,
Yeah,
and and he didn't make any copies.
right. That
But
is
yeah, no,
sad.
I do get what you're saying though. There are some little hints of like something might happen. Like even when he's walking Marvin in and he encounters those gangsters or
Yeah,
wannabe gangsters, and he's like, you might get dog jacked. You know,
that was actually a part of the movie I really liked, was that the character Adam Driver plays, Patterson.
mm-hmm.
He is very comfortable, and he's in the moment. A car of young, what would be, stereotyped as gang members, or scary dudes, rolls up on him, and they're like, "Hey," and he's just very calm, looks at him, and interacts with them in a very natural way,
Right.
and even has like kind of a joke for them. It's like, it's very it's how I wish I could act.
Yeah. Sure.
It's
Yeah.
it's very endearing. And so ultimately, like, I really enjoy a lot of the ideas of the movie. I just didn't necessarily enjoy my experience watching the last third,
Right.
thinking something else was going to happen.
Yeah. And I would say like give it time, and maybe come back to it with now knowing where you know where it's heading. Just like enjoy it for what it is, because that was really it for me. And also, I come just knowing what a Jim Jarmusch film is, so I never had that expectation of like some sort of dramatic
Thing,
denouement.
yeah.
That's why it was surprising to me to even just see the that event happened with the notebook, because it's kind of telegraphed. It's like she goes, "Yeah, let's go see the movie," and then he leaves the notebook on the couch, and you're like, "Oh no, something's gonna happen to the notebook." And there's such beautiful poems too. But yeah, it's just
It is beautiful.
yeah, those poems, by the way, are written by Ron Padgett, who is an incredible poet. I had never read him before the movie,
Hmm.
but I like just sought out every book that he wrote after that,
Oh,
because I was
wow.
just so blown away by the poetry. And yeah, I guess just another funny thing about the movie is that it's about kind of being comfortable with your place in life. And if there's something noble about just being a bus driver who writes poetry, that you don't
Totally.
need to be this ambitious person who's going to be poet laureate, or make a living from your art. And yeah, I guess that spoke to me. And it's just ironic because basically it's made by two people. Jim Jarmusch, yeah, he's a filmmaker. He's he does that for a living. That he's never, I mean, he probably worked odd jobs before he became a filmmaker, but he's had a steady career pretty much since I've been born, because he really broke through with Stranger Than Paradise in 1984. But and then yeah, Ron Padgett too. Like Ron Padgett has made a living as a poet. He said he's never worked a day in his life. He's just
Wow, that's
he's just,
amazing.
yeah, because he's there's just something about his poetry which is just he starts it's actually a good thing if you're an aspiring poet to kind of look to, where he just starts with something very minuscule, and then he expands from
Layers
that,
it, yeah.
and then yeah, it could just be an observation, like you just start with something that's on your desk, and make an observation about that. My favorite poem in it is love poem, and it's about a book of matches.
Yeah.
You know, and another funny thing is you don't see that book of matches anymore. Like it's really rare. Like the production company actually had to make one specifically for the movie.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, because that's a real poem that some of the poems like Ron Padgett wrote for the movie. Some of them are actually poems that he had written previously
Right.
that Jim Jarmusch liked, and he said like we can incorporate this. And yeah, it just really ties into um the Paterson character, because there's no other way in we really have with him other than in terms of interior. He's a very exterior kind of guy. Like uh a lot of his which I find very sweet, like his interactions with, you're not even sure if that's his wife or this live-in girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like it's not really clear. But what's this, like their interactions are, it's her, kind of driving the conversation or introducing ideas, and he's just kind of along for it, even though he hesitates when she asks him to buy the guitar.
Right.
And she's like, no, it comes with lessons and everything,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be the next. Yeah, because in terms of ambition, she is
She's
like,
got the ambition. Yeah.
yeah, but it's kind of misdirected energy, because it's just like, okay, today I want to paint, today I want to play guitar, and the next day I want to bake muffins.
Yeah. I mean, I really resonated with that idea though of like being happy, having a job and still being creative and not, and having those be separate, and like, and having it be okay that you're not monetizing your creativity. It's
Right,
something that it's like, it's kind of a big part of all of us. It's like, I feel so much better when I have a project or two
right,
and they don't have to, it doesn't have to coincide with my job.
right.
Um, and yeah, so I think, yeah, that's like the most beautiful idea, I think, of the movie
Mhm.
is being comfortable.
Yeah, that's most of us. And
Yeah,
it doesn't mean, it doesn't diminish your creative output just because you're not ambitious, like that's the thing. You can be creating beautiful works of art without anybody knowing about it.
totally.
It's there's this pressure of just like that people put on themselves, I guess maybe because of social media, that it's like, oh, you got to put yourself out there, but no, there's some guy in Paterson, New Jersey who writes poetry. And yeah, and it could be amazing when we just don't know about it. And sometimes that's enough. It's like, I think having gone through so many processes in terms of creative stuff, like, I'm now at the phase where, to me, it's just the act. That's all that matters. Like the output, hopefully it shows up, but I'm not fretting about it as much as I used to when I was younger, where it's like, oh man, like it has to count, like this is all has to matter. Whereas now it's just like, well, if I enjoyed the process of doing it, and it was like that, I reached that high,
Hmm.
that moment where it was just like, oh, everything's clicking. Like, some actually the other day when I was biking around the park, I was just thinking about that too, of just like, there's ideas for me that have to click in a project where it's like, oh, this is the thing that's kind of like an anchor, and I need to hang on to that, because sometimes I'll lose it if I don't like write it down,
Hmm.
and I forget it, and then it just, it's like the entire project falls apart, because it's like, oh, I don't have those anchors anymore, those things that make it click together, you know. So I was just thinking about that, but that's it. That's what matters to me now, more than like, me getting a work out there. And I guess that goes without saying, I actually, in a funny way, I started a project a year before I saw Patterson, and I'm still working on it now.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how long it's taken me, and I've like shot it over several years with different actors.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, it's the process for me. I mean, who knows? It might end up being like, I don't know if you've ever seen Synecdoche, New York,
Yeah.
where he puts on the play for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
No,
Totally.
hopefully not. I want to move on from this project eventually, but like, I think I think people just need to enjoy the process a lot more, and I think the movie's a great reminder for me about that. And yeah, it's just that type of movie for me where if I put it on, because yeah, anybody with an Amazon Prime account can put it on, I end up watching the entire thing. It's just that's what happens, and something about it, like it's just rare too, because I mean, you did bring up that idea that you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, there's not many movies, and I tend to seek that out, especially like late at night, where I just want something ambient, something that just like I nothing much happens. I like those types of movies. And they do exist, but they're rare. It's like I've been introduced to this term called liminal space, and I feel like that's what these movies occupy, or they present, like liminal space. When a movie does that to me, I'm just like, man, I love this. This is great.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah, like
um,
it seemed like there was a concerted effort, or maybe not, but obviously Patterson doesn't have a smartphone. It's kind of an
yes.
ancillary part of the movie, but it
Mhm.
ends up being kind of critical because you can kind of tell he's not a person on technology. His occupation is to drive a bus. His
Mhm.
hobby is to write poetry, and he doesn't really seem that interested in sports or like watching TV. And so it's like everything is in person and analog, and and he seems happy. And like I almost wonder if Jarmusch is like subtly trying to like putting in that idea of like, we don't need the smartphone to be happy, or
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. It's funny because what got me into the other movie I said that kind of resonated with me that he did in the past, I guess since the turn of the century, um, uh, Limits of Control. That's another movie that a lot of people hate because it's very obtuse. There's not a lot like for you to lead into it, and it doesn't really pay
okay,
off
yeah,
the way people expect it to. But the thing was, when I was listening to the interviews that he was doing during that time, he was talking about how excited he was about like new ways of thinking.
mm-hmm.
Like, that was the thing that was motivating him. And I was just fascinated by it, because now that I've seen what he's done since then, it's like, yeah, it is. There are new ways of thinking that are still analog, that are still like, tangible and right in front of you, rather than, yeah, you're just, you're relying on technology to kind of feed into that new way of thinking.
Uh-huh.
That there's ways of actually thinking outside of things, even though technology can be used as a tool. Because I even feel like I would be a totally different filmmaker if I shot everything on film.
Yeah.
Like, it would, like, the reason why I've arrived at the approach that I do when I make my films now is because of digital technology. Like, and I mean, that's something that fascinates me. Like, I really do want to push possibilities with the image. But I wouldn't have been able to do that with film. It would have just been completely different. I still probably would have explored that, but yeah, that's what's fascinating. And yeah, Jarmusch is that guy. I mean, he does have an iPhone though. I know that because he talked about it in an interview where he was like saying that he's fascinated by sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So he would just sometimes, he said, he'd take out his iPhone and just record sounds on his phone.
Oh wow.
So that's how I knew he has an iPhone.
Okay, I
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah. But yeah, like people I know who have like gotten in touch with him and stuff usually say that you can't really, unless you're like super close to him, like you can't really get in touch with him directly. And this ties to Paterson, by the way. You can only get in touch with him usually through his partner, who's more like tech savvy, and that's Sarah Driver, who's also a great filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why this ties into this movie is I actually found out like some backstory, which isn't really, that well known, unless you're like, you've got the inside scoop.
Oh yeah.
You won't read about this on the internet. So this is an exclusive, a
Oh.
movie food exclusive. um so yeah, he's been with his partner Sarah Driver for almost 40 years now. Yeah, they basically, when he started making films, she's been there. Like, she's not only like her lover, they also like work together with his
Mm.
films, but at the same time she also had her own ambitions of becoming a filmmaker, and she's made a few films too, but her career just didn't take off the same way that his did. And part of the reason why that is because she's been supporting him throughout all of these. So she's basically dedicating most of her energy into his work more than hers.
Mm.
So he's become like this renowned filmmaker. He's won a bunch of awards, and she's kind of faded into the background. And this film actually kind of relates to it in a way that, in that sense of like, what if the two people, like the couple, are creative, but you know they're expressing themselves in different ways. And like, what does that entail, like being in a relationship with somebody who's creative, and what you have to sacrifice for that person, in order for them to fulfill their creativity. It's just like, I guess I've heard this advice given, that if you are like a creative artistic type, that you should like date a doctor or a lawyer or an
Yeah.
accountant, because it's just hard if you're both creative.
Hmm.
And I think for a while they even they kind of separated, they were estranged for a while, and it's possible that that also affected the work. That's why I feel like the films just felt strange. But this is definitely one of Jim Jarmusch's most personal films, I feel,
Hmm.
because of just how it portrays that relationship.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, just in my own relationship, I know when I met, I was in a band and she was an actress. So it's
Right.
like there was like we can bond over creativity, but then we both also have like a groundedness.
Hmm.
So it's like, but yeah, it's tricky, It's like if one of us is feeling more of the creative energy, what does the other one do? And so it's like
Yeah.
it helps to kind of have. For me, I have my job is my grounding force, and then I use the creativity as like a hobby. That's how I've managed it.
Hmm.
But then if the creativity is your job, it's like it can get really tricky. So yeah, that's interesting about Driver and Jarmusch.
Right. And I mean, in a weird way too, like, I guess maybe I'm speaking from an idealistic perspective. Like, the couple in that movie is like what I aspired to as well. It's like that I would love to have that kind of relationship with somebody, because it's also the kind of relationship where I feel like people from the outside might not quite understand it.
Right.
But you have, because that really is, I think we brought it up in the previous episode too, of just it's a matter of understanding each other enough to like reach a midpoint.
Yeah.
So yeah, because she definitely lets him just write his poetry. Like, there's no, and she's encouraging about it too, which is great. It's like, you should make copies. So
Yeah, and then I also like their relationship. They were comfortable together, obviously, but then they were also
mhm.
comfortable apart. Like she was totally fine with him. Hey, go do your dog walk and hang out and drink a beer
Yeah.
at the bar. I'm
Right.
gonna go do my thing. I don't really know
Mhm.
what her thing was, but so
Yeah.
it's like,
It was depending on the day, what she
yeah,
felt like
yeah,
on that
yeah,
day.
exactly.
But she had her what her aesthetic was, her consistent aesthetic was black and white. She loved black and white.
That's so
Like, that was her
funny.
thing.
So funny. Oh,
Yeah.
the one kind of production note I read, and you can maybe correct me on this, is that it's so there's a line that she says where she has a dream about twins,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
from the production note that I read, Jarmusch had shot all these scenes and noticed that there were all these twins popping up, and then wrote that line after. So it was kind of like I forget how he described it. It's kind of like anti foreshadowing or something, where it's like you think maybe the movie will end where they're pregnant with twins or something, but
Right.
it
Right.
doesn't get there.
Hmm.
Just like that scene where the car pulls up and warns Paterson of that the dog might get stolen, and that doesn't happen. You
Yeah.
know.
For sure. And I mean, the other, I guess, event in the movie is the bus breaks down, and it's in the trailer, but it's just like, okay, that's fine. They'll just replace the bus, and
Yeah, it's non-event.
everybody will
Yeah,
be on their way.
yeah.
That's just how it is. But yeah, the twins thing, what's fascinating about it is that apparently Jim Jarmusch like had too many, and then he had to cut it down. Eventually he was like, yeah, we're putting too many twins, like, they got carried away with it. But
Twins.
it really started with the I think the twins on the bus. That
Hmm.
was really it. Like, when I think one of the actors, like one of the kids, because usually kids they especially when they're younger, they usually have a sibling with them to kind of like can take their place, because they gotta still go to school and stuff like that on set. To but yeah, when they realize, oh, you're twins, it's like that's what like got the ball rolling with that. And yeah, I heard an interview where he was talking about just how it just happens to be this thing where you start thinking about something and then you just start noticing it everywhere you go. And he mentioned actually he thought about like a woman that is wearing like a knee brace or something like that, and then he just started seeing it everywhere he was going. Like
Totally.
it's just that weird coincidence that and the movie has that dreamy feel, especially when time is passing, when he's driving the bus, and there's a lot of like these beautiful like superimpositions and cross cutting, and time passing, and the score is amazing, which also by the way, Jim Jarmusch composed the score with his producer
Oh,
Carlo
wow.
Logan. Yeah, they're in a band called Squirrel, and I think he's been doing the scores since I want to say Only Lovers Left Alive, which is also an incredible score.
Okay.
That's a movie of his that I've been meaning to come back to, because that was a movie that I thought it was all right. Like, because I guess, talking about like setting the bar high, like I felt like with Jim Jarmusch, yeah, he set the bar high for me, from the 80s to the 90s, that I was just like, when the new ones started coming out, I still remember the first one I saw that disappointed me was Coffee and Cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that was really more like a short film project that he had been building, and then he just like shot a few more short films to kind of round it off. So I was just like, yeah, it was all right. There were some bits that were good, and then I liked Broken Flowers, but there was just something about Broken Flowers where it felt like it was missing something.
Yeah.
Have you seen a Jim Jarmusch movie
I've
before
seen
this one?
Broken Flowers.
Oh, you've seen Broken
Yeah,
Flowers.
and
Okay,
that
yeah,
one seemed very sleepy to me. Like
yeah.
it was coming off of Lost in Translation.
Yeah,
And so
right.
there was an aspect of like wanting it to be like that. I remember when I was watching it.
Right. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's definitely a different beat, a different rhythm. I eventually grew to love Broken Flowers, but yeah, it was just like these movies were not hitting me like from the first shot like the same way, those the earlier movies did, like Night on Earth, or Stranger Than Paradise and Down by Law. But Paterson, man, yeah, it was just that amazing thing. And like, yeah, I've watched it so many times now.
It's
Like, it's
definitely
crazy.
a comfortable and very cozy movie to watch, and you do end up feeling good as you watch it, and you leave feeling good. You just don't expect something big to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is a movie that I feel like, it will reward you more, on subsequent viewings. The first viewing might not be it. Like, it will only hit certain people that way. But yeah, I mean, the movie was just so, yeah, it affected me so much. Like, aside from just going into this deep dive with Ron Padgett, I actually have some of his poetry books signed by him. And Ron Padgett
Oh
is like
wow.
yeah, he's up there in age, so these books are really going to be valuable.
Well, good.
And yeah, and a lot of them are out of print, so I was able to actually yeah, just a weird kind of roundabout thing. I went to this bookstore in Venice that focused on poetry. Like, they sold mostly poetry books in this bookstore in Venice. The guy who runs the store, Emmett, like, he grew really fond of me because the books are like super cheap, by the way. Like, most of them are like 40% off the cover price. Um and it's great to support like a local store. Beyond Baroque, that's the name of the building that it's in, but the bookstore has its own name. Like, it was named after a poet, because
Hmm.
it's just a weird story involving Vigo Mortensen. But anyway, so yeah, he found these Ron Padgett poetry books, and he just sold them to me for like $6-7.
Nice.
And these were like first printings. It was amazing. So yeah, Ron Padgett definitely holds a special place to me now, and it's also like been a gateway to me for like poets that he's translated, because he can translate a lot of French poetry. So yeah, and another crazy thing too is I actually, because Paterson, New Jersey is not that far from New York City. So I made a pilgrimage, and I made actually several pilgrimages
Ooh,
to
nice.
Paterson, New Jersey. Yeah, and I took photos and I visited some of the locations from the movie. Yeah, some of them aren't actually located in Paterson. Like the bar is not in Paterson; it's actually in Queens.
Oh,
So it was closer to where I lived. Yeah. But yeah, most of the places, obviously the falls, the waterfalls are incredible to see. And that statue of Oliver Hardy from Laurel and Hardy.
yeah,
Oh no, wait, not is it Laurel and Hardy, or am I Abbott and Costello? Sorry, I'm blank. Yeah, yeah. So that statue, I walked past it because it's a fairly walkable neighborhood,
yeah.
and and yeah, I even saw the bus that goes that route that
Oh, that's
that
good.
Adam Driver's character drives. Yeah, because it's the main bus that goes along Main Street.
The bus, was it bus 23?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, it was great to see all these places, but also Jim Jarmusch has been open about, because they were like, yeah, some people I guess who are from Paterson were saying like Paterson is nothing like the what you portray in the movie. And he was like, yeah, it's kind of like a fairy tale, it
Yeah.
takes place in kind of a magical version of Paterson. Because one of the things that it doesn't really show, I think, in the movie is that the language I heard mostly in Paterson was Spanish. Like there's a very heavy Hispanic population in Paterson. And also it like, especially Main Street, it's pretty grimy. Like there's a lot of poverty and crime in Paterson too, which the movie doesn't really show, except for hinting at these things, because yeah, it is really like a place in yeah, in Jim Jarmusch's mind, and maybe even, yeah, what Paterson was to we haven't even mentioned where the title and the idea, I guess, comes from, is this epic book length poem that William Carlos Williams wrote called Paterson, and it's in six parts. And I also have the book. I haven't finished it, but it's an incredible poem. Like, I mean, it's even hard to just say that it's a pure poem, because it has like historical aspects of it, anecdotes. Like he just threw everything in there. It was one of those. I mean, I love that poets have this thing where they've been working on this project like their entire lives, like similar to um William Wordsworth. He wrote the Prelude when he was in his 20s, and he finished it when he died, basically. And that's what Paterson was for William Carlos Williams. Like he started writing it, I think, in the 50s. No, I may be wrong, but yeah, he started it when he was younger, and yeah, it basically was yeah, it was finished when he died.
Wow.
That's when the work finished. But yeah, I highly recommend it. And yeah, Ron Padgett's books too are amazing. If people want to seek out poetry, and I mean, I would even say this movie should inspire people. It inspired me to write poetry. I wrote some like Paterson like poems too. So
Good.
it was great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very inspirational, and I'm happy that it made an impact on you. Um, my last two notes. I was looking over my notes, and we'll just bang these out real quick. One, there's actually a Paterson, California, so it's Patterson, and the reason why I know of Paterson, California, is because we have family that used to that. It's along I-5. It's kind of in the Central Valley area, and we have family
Okay.
that at one point owned a house there in the 2000s, and it became just like a mecca for like me and JR to drive up. We would meet the cousins halfway, and like watch like Pacquiao fights, and just it was
Wow.
I wouldn't call it a party house. That it wasn't the Paterson party house, but it was just like a celebratory vibe there. So
Oh, nice.
and very much like Paterson, New Jersey, very much like a working class kind of town. It was kind of like a new residences set up for agriculture, and I think for like the warehousing in the area.
Gotcha. Did they have like any tourist attractions or anything like
No,
that?
I mean it's kind of a truck stop, honestly, but
Okay, gotcha.
but with like a nice neighborhood nearby, and so they bought a house because
Mm.
it was fun. And then the last thing, and this was this is actually an insight from Malika. So there's a scene where Patterson's going for a walk, and he hears someone rapping, and
Yes.
so this has a connection to Snake and the Eagle's Shadow, in that it's Method Man from obviously from the Wu-Tang
Wu
Clan,
Tang.
and so instinctively I go, oh hey, it's Method Man, and Malika
Yeah.
looks at me and she says, I think that's your favorite thing to do when you're watching any kind of media is point out when Method Man is in it. And I laughed so hard because it's so true.
Mhm.
Anytime Method Man is in anything, The Wire, any kind of pop-up TV show, movie, the first thing I can't control myself. I have to go, oh hey, that's Method Man. I have to say it out loud to let people know it, whether it's obnoxious or not. So anyways,
Oh man.
that's just a little
Yeah.
private insight into my
That's
psyche. It's
funny.
like if I see Method Man,
Well,
everyone will know.
yeah, I'm not sure if he was just relating to that too. There was this Korean movie called Volcano High,
Mm-hmm.
and like MTV did the dub with like a bunch of rappers doing their
Oh,
voices. And I think Method Man was one of the voices for one of the characters. I'm not positive though, but yeah, you should check it out. Like
I could pick
Volcano
it
High
out.
was decent, you know.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
could pick
yeah.
it out. Yeah,
Yeah, but Snoop Dogg was definitely one of the voices for sure. I remember that, but I can't remember.
nice.
Yeah, I'm not positive if Method Man was, but yeah, that's funny. You point him out
Yeah,
whenever he
yeah.
shows up. Huh?
I just can't
Yeah,
help
and
it.
he's credited in the movie as Cliff Smith, by the way. His
Oh,
actual
his
name,
actual name,
Clifford
yeah,
Smith.
Clifford. Yeah.
Yeah, Cliff Smith. He's not using his rap name.
So going back to the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned, so you told us your lead up to it, and then you said that there was something you got after it. Like, have you already mentioned that, or
Yeah, it was just basically going back to Paterson, going to
going
Paterson
to
and
Patterson?
discovering it. Because yeah, even just the journey getting there, you have to take three different trains
Hmm.
to get to Paterson. So it's not an easy trip. Like you have to really plan it out, you because also you have to align the trains. So it's really out of the way to go there. It's not some it's not also a place where you'd see a lot of tourists. Like
Yeah.
I definitely felt like walking around there, even though I'm a brown skinned dude. Like people probably noticed, especially I had a camera around my neck, that like this guy is not from here.
Yeah.
You know, um, but yeah, it was just like an extension of that experience of the movie, and I don't even know any movie that's had that effect on me where I was just like, man, I should go to these places. I mean, sometimes I probably there's certain locations in LA where I know like a movie was shot there, and I'm like, oh, that puts a smile to my face every time I drive past it. I mean, one that I would mention because today there was this news that was announced, so it's kind of pertinent, that Michael Mann is doing a sequel to Heat, but
Oh.
it's gonna be a novel. Yeah, it's gonna be called Heat 2, and he's co-writing it with another writer. But I'm excited. It's coming out in August, and I definitely want to read that book. But the main heist that happens in Heat, it takes place on Fifth Street in downtown, and
Uh-huh.
it's basically by where my favorite building in LA is the Hotel Bonaventure, and it's by where the old Bunker Hill neighborhood used to be. And yeah, so every time I drive that, because Fifth Street basically leads into uh the 110. It's an on ramp, like that's where it ends on an on ramp to the 110. So you if you're exiting downtown, that's one of the ways out. So I every time I pass by that street, and then I see the bank building is not a bank there, it's just like a regular skyscraper now. But yeah, every time I drive past that area, I'm like, man, yeah, this was where the shootout was in Heat, you know. But that's the closest that I have to it. But Patterson was just like, man, I'm in the city. The only one thing though, that there was one location I couldn't go to, because it was like being renovated, so I was sad
Uh-huh.
about it. The bench where you can see the waterfall, and that's where that
Yeah.
scene is where he hangs out and he has his lunch, and it is also where he meets the Japanese guy, and who happens to be reading a Japanese translation of Paterson. Yeah, I couldn't go to that bench because yeah, they had like dug it up. Like I guess they were just fixing it up. So yeah, and by the time I think they reopened, I'd already left New York.
Okay.
So um, I missed it. But it was funny because I even went there's like a tourist office there. And I was like, yeah, you guys know the movie Patterson? And some of them had never heard of it. I was
Wow.
like, this is a missed opportunity. You guys should just like highlight these locations that were in the movie, and people could go see it. But it's like they're like, you're the first guy to come in here and
That's
ask
so
about this. Like
funny.
nobody else comes to Patterson to like ask about the movie and the locations.
If you end up going back, if subsequently they're like, you know what, a lot of people have come, and we've now added, you can go to the to
Yeah.
to see the house. You can like rock the
Yeah.
mailbox. You
Oh,
know.
oh, yeah, I was looking for that house too. Like, where is that house? Because it's a pink house. But obviously the residential area is pretty dense. So it was just hard to find it. So I don't even know if it exists or they just made it for the movie. But I was trying to plot it out because it's like his walk is actually geographically accurate. The
Okay.
walk that he takes to the bus depot
Mm-hmm.
from the house, because I took the walk, but like I couldn't find where that curve was when you exit that kind of pathway from the
Yeah.
waterfalls. I was like, oh, where is that? It's just like, that was there were a couple of missing gaps. It was that, and then also there's another location which I think might be close to where the bench was where they were doing the renovation, where he walks past it. He like goes down some stairs and it leads to kind of like an alcove where you get to see the waterfalls up close. Like I couldn't find where that location was either, but other than that, yeah, all the other locations like the bus depot, it's there. Main Street's there. What were some of the other locations I'm trying to remember? I didn't see the laundromat either.
The place where he sits and talks to the girl who's writing a poem.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That the little industrial area. Yeah, I like that bit too. That was a really nice scene with the girl, and she also happened to have a twin. And that poem that she recites is actually not by Ron Padgett. That's actually written by Jim Jarmusch.
Right.
Just another interesting tidbit.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so that was his poem.
All right.
Inserted because one time, yeah, Jim Jarmusch actually aspired to be a poet, and then he discovered film
Yeah.
and ended up going the other direction. So yeah.
Well, I'm happy he made Paterson. It's an enjoyable film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm it's just too bad that you were expecting that thing to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully like, you don't have to watch it again right away. Give it some time, and it's a movie that I think will stay with you, and
It's
when
definitely
you're ready, watch it again now. No.
it's definitely a movie I'm happy I saw. It's like it's not one of those films that's like, oh, that was a waste of time. Like it was definitely enjoyable. The ideas I really like, and the pacing, and yeah, it was fun. I think we should definitely do this again. Where we'll just like keep just knocking off films.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. It's just like this could just be an ongoing thing, because I mean, I have a lot of favorite films. It's not just one favorite film.
Yeah,
I mean, we could even just go on a Jim Jarmusch
sure. Well,
binge
I mean,
if you're interested in that.
Yeah. I mean, even in this pod, you mentioned Cleaners. I wrote that down, and then Heat is another one that I have not seen. So that
oh my god,
that might be Heat might be a good one to kind of like cover, and like where it's like like I'll watch it with fresh eyes. You do a rewatch and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, Michael Mann is another one of my favorite filmmakers. Like, I'll watch anything he's doing. He's actually working on an Enzo Ferrari biopic right now, so I'm excited for that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and the thing is, people always go to Heat as like Michael Mann's masterpiece. Like, this is the movie. It's not even my favorite Michael Mann movie, but it's great. Like, that's just the thing. It's like it's definitely top tier Michael Mann, I would say, and just we can talk about the how huge it was.
Yeah, it's one of those it's one of those movies I don't know how I missed it. It was definitely came out at a time when I was watching movies, so I'm curious to kind of look into it and see like what did I watch instead. So I'll have to like find out the release date and then I'll look what other movies opened, and it'll probably be something like really like Adam's Family or something, but we'll figure it out.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, your friend who watched all of the 1995 films, he had to see Heat
Right.
because
Yeah.
that was the
Yeah.
movie of 95.
Totally.
So
Okay, cool. Well,
yeah.
yeah, I'll get his synopses of it too. All
Cool.
right, we did it.
All right, man. Yeah, we did it.
Another ep in the
Amazing.
books. Is there any? Yeah, like, do we have like a closing? Any like business? I guess we can just plug at the end. Follow us Twitter movie food pod, and
Yes.
follow Carlo's Letterboxd.
Yeah. Astrofish with a C. So ASTROFISCH.
Okay.
Sometimes I have trouble spelling it out. But yeah, I write reviews on occasion. But yeah, it's really just kind of a throwaway thing for me. It's not something I really take that seriously. But comments are open. If you disagree with me, or feel free to DM us. Or we haven't really been tweeting actively yet on Movie Food Pod, but yeah, we'll definitely put out the top 5 of 2021 for sure.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Until next
Okay,
time.
man.
Sounds
All
good.
right. Till next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.